Times, she has spent decades writing good, groundbreaking stories as the finance editor of the Times in New York and the Wall Street Journal. Her interlocutor is Paul Walters, award-winning BBC journalist and podcast host. Over to you, both of you.
We have microphones. Hello, and thank you for joining us. I think a previous session was about money and wealth. This one is going to be a lot more salacious about the dark, seamy side of really rich people. And this is the book we're talking about. It's called Billionaire, Nerd, Savior, King, and the subtitle is The Hidden Truth About Bill Gates and His Power to Shape Our World. And it's by Anupreeta Das, who writes to the New York Times, so you can believe everything in this. And in case you weren't here tomorrow, or yesterday that is, I have a book too called Murder in Moonlit Square. And the question authors most like to hear is, will you please sign my book? And afterwards, we're going to be over there by the bookshop, and Anupreeta will be with copies of her book, so please go and show her some appreciation. But
please do the same for Paul as well.
Oh. Now, before we start, I want to ask you a question. It's a multiple choice question. There are 3 answers, and it's, do you think Bill Gates is a power for good overall or for bad, or you're not really sure? So I don't know, hands up people who think Bill Gates is a power for good. Okay, a few. People who think he's a power not for good, for bad? Even fewer. People who just don't know, you're not sure. Okay, that's a good audience. People, they're not sure, they've got an open mind. So we'll find out what you think at the end of this too. But Anupreeta, why Bill Gates? Why this book?
To me, he represented many facets of what billionaires are. I mean, this is a guy who's been in the public image for decades, from when he co-founded Microsoft back in 1975, and then he was kind of this nerdy guy, you know, kind of the prototype for what we think of as nerdy tech geniuses. And then he became a vilified sort of corporate villain, and then he became this philanthropist, and that changed his image a lot. And then I think about 5 years ago, when you first heard the news that he had been in contact and actually hung out with Jeffrey Epstein, which, who for you know, those of you who don't know, is now dead, convicted sex offender who President Trump has also hung out with. So all of these facets of Gates was really interesting to me to write about different aspects. He's like a cipher almost, or a prism through which to talk about bigger issues of wealth and inequality and our love and hate of billionaires.
So Bill Gates was the richest man in America for years and years in a row. There may be some younger people in the audience who aren't familiar with him. I mean, how did he get his riches? Who was he before he became, well, I was going to say before he became controversial. Maybe he has always been controversial. But what was he first known for?
He was born in Seattle, and he was the son of pretty well-to-do parents. And here's a kid who had access to computers well before people knew what personal computers were, you know, because he lived close to a university, he had a lot of access. And then he went to Harvard, and then he started coding, and then he basically created a market for software, and which is interesting because back in that time, in the 70s, people thought that hardware was where the future was, and software was something that was, you know, being given away, would be given away for free. And Gates realized that, you know, anyone, like hardware, computer box was a commodity that everyone could make, whereas software could be copyrighted. And that was kind of his, the biggest innovation and realization on the basis of which he co-founded Microsoft. So I'm sure everyone knows Microsoft, which currently is worth about 4 trillion, even though Gates hasn't been directly involved with Microsoft. So that's who he is. His first kind of iteration, and since 2000 and more, I would say since he quit Microsoft on a day-to-day basis, he is one of the world's, he's probably the world's best known philanthropist who has billions of dollars to give away through the Gates Foundation, and has done so and in ways that are both good and bad, which I go into in the book.
Okay, so let's stick with the good for the minute. So Microsoft came along, vast power. He was accused of being a monopolist, squeezing out competitors, but then pivoted to being this wonderful philanthropist trying to eradicate polio and malaria and putting loads of money into things. But was that philanthropy really about his brand, his personal brand? It seems a horrible thing to say about somebody who's trying to cure polio or eradicate polio. Was it really all about making him look good?
The timing of that is very interesting, because when in 2000 he was really kind of at the height of his notoriety, and he was the target of a US investigation into alleged monopoly. And so that's when he pivoted to philanthropy and became a more, he had always said, I mean, to be fair, he had always said that he intended to give the bulk of his fortune to philanthropy. He just hadn't thought about it and decided when he would do that. So the timing is very interesting, that in 2000, he founded the Gates Foundation, and in the following years started talking more publicly about how he was going to, as Paul said, help eradicate polio, and how he came at it with a very technologist's mindset, thinking about, eradicating a disease in kind of like in a fix-it way, right? Like, okay, you've got this thing, I've got a solution, I've got the money, I'm going to put it to work, and I'm going to get the result. And so it was kind of a branding that is partly intentional and partly because the media reacts to what people do, right? So we in the media often write about what people are doing, and then that helps create an image of a person. And once that started, and once he liked the fame that came, who doesn't, right? If you're going to be portrayed as a saint, as someone who's like doing good for mankind, you're going to lean into that image. And I think that became more and more important over time as the Gates Foundation grew bigger, and he needed to have this very high profile as a philanthropist in order to get what the Gates Foundation's get to where the Gates Foundation wanted to be.
I suppose given that he's doing all this really good stuff, you're looking at the hidden truth and the dark side. Like, are you just jealous? Do you hate success? Why are you trying to bring down this great guy?
I am a hardcore communist. I kid. As journalist, I think it's always important and necessary to hold power to account, right? To go behind very successful and very popular and very high profile and very wealthy men and women. And largely, I mean, it's interesting if you look at the list of Forbes billionaires, they're largely white men, which again has like, and I'm talking in the context of an American setup. And so no, I don't. I think if you believe in a capitalist market-based system, you will have wealth, right? And that's part of it. And wealth creation is necessary, job creation, that is all tied to the fact that someone's built a successful company. So no, but like behind that, I mean, I think, and people's personalities are, people are who they are. But Gates was interesting to me because he was so hard-charging, and because of the way his personal behavior affected the culture of Microsoft, which is not something people think. If you're thinking about like corporate culture, you're like, okay, like this is, you do X, you do Y. But here Microsoft was very much a company that was driven by the culture and behavior of one man, right? So he could be extremely rude and arrogant, and if you didn't keep up, he had no patience. He couldn't talk at your level, and if you had done a presentation, say, and you didn't, remember what you put in footnote 28, and he would, because that's who he is, he would call you out, and that can be, and that became the culture of Microsoft. So I think that is part of what you don't see about someone like Gates, and that behavior then carried into how he worked and operated at the foundation, which was again kind of, very dictatorial almost in a way. And then you had, the last thing I will say, which is, of course, rumors of his philandering had been part of the Gates story right from the start, but it's something that wasn't widely known until the divorce from Melinda French Gates. That's when a lot of this stuff started coming out about Gates's behavior for decades. So,
I suppose Melinda French, her involvement in his life may have changed him and his behavior. What do you think first attracted Melinda to the billionaire Bill Gates?
I don't have an insight into Melinda's mind. I wish I did, because I would ask her that question. I think Gates can be charming when he wants to. He is someone who doesn't, he doesn't engage. I've met him and I've seen, I'll give you the comparison between Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, and the two are best buddies, right? Warren is someone who can actually just, joke with you, and he loves banter, and you say something, he'll be quick to respond, and he can speak, as I said, if you're a kid, he will talk to you in a way that is relatable. If you're an everyday investor, he will do the same. Gates does have dry wit, so it is kind of something that appeals to, I guess, to Melinda French Gates, but it's also flattering to be asked out by the guy who's changing the world with his personal software, with personal computing. And so I think that was attractive to Melinda.
Something that surprised me, I knew they were a team, obviously they were a married couple, and they were a corporate team as well, and a symbolic team of doing good in the world. So it hadn't really registered with me that he was a massive shagger. He was having serial affairs with women under his employ, and others, and I'd kind of had the idea that maybe he was led astray by some people who he had dealings with. We'll come to that later. But when you discover that he has a pattern of betrayal of someone who's so close to him, that kind of makes me look at him a lot more negatively.
Yeah, first thing, he was dating an employee, right? He's the boss and he's dating an employee. And at that time, perhaps he didn't have those human, HR kind of conditions that say do not, because that's an imbalance of power. So that, I think, was something that was seen as a negative. And he also had this unconventional arrangement where he went on a week-long vacation with his ex-girlfriend while he was dating Melinda. So again, hard to pass judgment. That's who people are. But I would say that people who I spoke to for the purposes of this book, people who knew about his affairs, I think they make the point that for Gates, being in a marriage and having relationships were two different things. He felt that Melinda was a companion for him, who he loved dearly, but that didn't mean that he couldn't then also pursue relationships with other people.
But
and that is a
wasn't there a
distinction.
thing about Big Macs, and Big Macs was a kind of a code for young women being brought in?
So the backstory to all of that is that Gates met Jeffrey Epstein back in 2019, or no, back in 2013, I think, or I'm forgetting them. Yeah, maybe 2011. Sorry, it's been a while since I read my own words. But sorry, I blanked on your question there.
Well, so they had this, it's not a great way of referring to women, but you mentioned Epstein, so let's go to him. So he's obviously a famous dead person in prison in America. Did he commit suicide? Was he murdered? To cover things up, the conversation, the discussion continues. He seems to have been friends with so many powerful men, ones that you might disapprove of, like Trump, also people in the British government, who've just been kicked out of it recently, Bill Clinton, pretty much everyone. And so the argument is, what on earth was nice guy Bill Gates doing hanging around with this notorious sleazeball? And you describe people entering his house, and it sounds really sleazy. But the defense for Bill would be, he might have been able to connect me with people who could do good for the world. Which, if true, is a good defense. What do you think? Was it all about philanthropy or something else?
One of the things that was very interesting to me was that a lot of people met Epstein who had had a reputation for, and it was something that I think Donald Trump, you know, it was something that was a bit of a joke, and everyone knew that Epstein liked underage women. And he was convicted in 2008, or a few years before Gates met him for the first time. So, which raises the question that if you are a philanthropist, which, you know, with this global image to protect and being this advocate for you know, the uplift of humanity, why would you you know, consort with someone? Why would you hang out with someone like Jeffrey Epstein? Even, like, you know, knowing that he'd had this kind of sleazy
having
record,
been
right?
warned by your wife.
Right, right. But, you know, Gates is someone who he has a rational mind in the sense that he operates through trade-offs, right? So for him, from my read of it, he thought that Epstein would be able to connect him with other billionaires, and this was during a time when Gates was trying to raise money to eradicate polio. And Epstein said that he could put him in touch with other billionaires, and therefore Gates said, okay, let me meet you, and, like, you know, we're going to build this campaign. Which then begets the question that you're Bill Gates, you can call up, you can pick up the phone and call anyone, and they will take your call, right? So I don't know why you would need Epstein to make those connections, but okay, fine. So he did that, and in one of the messages that Gates, an email that he sent to his folks at the Gates Foundation after his meeting with Epstein, was that, you know, his lifestyle is intriguing, but it's not for me. So clearly he had kind of an insight into how Epstein lived, and Epstein lived in a world that was populated by a lot of, again, young women who were dangled in front of men of influence and power. And by dangling, I just mean that they were, you know, on offer, essentially. And this is
so
like
he was a convicted sex trafficker.
Yeah, I mean, who personally was, you know, accused of sex trafficking in women, girls as young as 14. And so why would you do that? And why would you need Epstein to help you raise money? I don't know. But I don't think anyone has the answer about Gates. The other thing, though, is that the foundation and Gates himself have wanted to win the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, who doesn't, right? I mean, you know, Trump built this campaign that perhaps, thankfully, I'm a journalist, so I cannot have publicly stated opinions, but in this case I will say that yes, that was a good thing that Trump did not win a Nobel Peace Prize. But you know, Gates, I think, would have been a candidate, and he had done enough of the kind of work that would appeal to the Nobel Prize Committee. And Epstein convinced Gates that he knew people on the Nobel Committee you can kind of, like, obviously it's anyone can nominate anyone for the Nobel Prize, but like the process is highly, highly quiet.
Well, anyone can be nominated by anyone.
Yeah, no, it's true. And
We could be nominated by
yeah,
you.
please. I mean, Paul is definitely. Please nominate him. And so Epstein, again, this is my reporting, but it's also it's out there now. Epstein told Gates that he could put him in touch with a few folks in Norway who would, who would be impressed by him, and that was what Gates. That was the trade-off Gates made. That okay, if I have a chance to increase my chances of winning a Nobel Prize, why would I not take Epstein up on it? The rest of it is less important to me than these things that Epstein is offering and promising. So that's how his brain worked. Melinda didn't agree with that. We can talk about that too.
I'm feeling more and more happy about Melinda and her view of the world. But I suppose it's interesting that, so this very powerful, hugely rich guy feels shy about contacting people to get what he wants. But how are the really rich different from us, the rest of us? Although we're in Kasoli, so it's quite a high net worth in the audience, I suspect. But how are they different from us? You've dealt with them in your reporting over the years. What's different?
One of the funniest, something that a billionaire told me when I asked him this very question, is that, look, the rich, the really wealthy, they have a separate set of problems that they can't discuss with anyone else, right? It's like, okay, my $500 million yacht is malfunctioning, who can I go to? Or they have a set of problems like, I want to, buy this painting, and can you connect me with someone? And so you're using a certain network of people who provide.
We've all been there. We all have these problems.
We all, yeah. No, well, in a version of it, sure. But I think without being judged, you can ask someone about your yacht or your, fifth house or your jet or which Gulfstream to buy.
Or how do I buy a cricket club?
Yeah, or sports teams, right? Like that's one thing that I think a lot of billionaires own. Islands too. I mean, like again.
What is it with the islands?
I think they want to be secluded. I mean, I don't know.
I could imagine buying a traffic island myself, but that's it.
Yeah. I mean, islands are a preoccupation along with sports teams. And I think once you've made all that money, you don't know, you wouldn't be able to spend it no matter what. If your net worth is above $100 billion or with Musk, double that now, I think, what are you going to do with that money? So it just, at least Gates is trying to give it away, even though I don't think he'll be able to because of the way markets work. But like you have all this money, and maybe you buy, if you want to buy a country, you can buy a country. If you want to buy, a social media platform because you don't like the way it operates, you can do that, i.e. Twitter and Elon Musk. And so they have a very different way of thinking. They have a very different set of problems, and they have very few people who they can talk to without judgment.
I suppose Bill Gates must really love Elon Musk because he's tried to overthrow the government, everyone hates him, and it takes the spotlight off Bill. It's how great, somebody worse than me. But a question, you've been to houses, the homes of people like this. What do you bring as a gift to the person who has 100 of everything already?
Flowers.
A nice bottle of wine? No.
This was a.
So what kind of flowers then?
I mean, I really had to think hard. For a regular dinner party, you might take like a bottle of wine, right? But then I was like, okay, what's a nice bottle of wine? Then you're like, okay, and then you have the New York Times budget, right, which is I think $50. So I don't know what kind of wine. I mean, you have to be to buy.
It has to be the nicest, most expensive wine in the world.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for $50, and so flowers fit, $50 flowers. But then, okay, you can't like actually go to the corner store, flower shop and just get a random bunch of carnations. So you have this like entire debate about like, okay, what's a good place? I was meeting with a billionaire in Chicago, and I don't know the city, and I spent like half the day, I think, researching what is a basket of flowers that would be okay without
do you
looking
Google
like
it? Google what flowers do billionaires like?
I was like, pretty aesthetic flowers that, aren't going to look cheap, or also like I'm trying too hard. Not because I want to impress them, but it's just, it's tradition. You're going to someone's house and you want to bring something. And so I mean, flowers.
So you turn up and you say, oh, look, I brought you these. And does their face sort of contort with disgust, or do they pretend to like them?
Most, and this was revelatory, and I think the wealthier you are, the nicer you are. Not Elon Musk.
Sex trafficking aside.
Yeah. No, yeah. But they're very polite, and so I'm sure even if they trashed the flowers right after, they were very gracious about it and very thankful. And then I went in, and it was like a museum, because you had all of these like sculptures, that were excavated. There's this one billionaire who collects Tibetan art and ancient Indian art, and so you felt like you were walking around. The statues with like half a head or no arms, so that like they're really, really
they couldn't even
real
afford
pieces.
a new one.
Yeah. So it is a completely different, slightly nerve-wracking experience to go into these homes. And one of them told me he had a very good pandemic, which because the entire building had his whole family, they were all able to be together, and it was a bonding experience. And so yeah, I mean, it's a different world.
So I want to come to the audience in a moment. I suppose before one question, people were suggesting questions, and one person in the audience, I can't see him. His question was, "Do you think she'd be able to get me a job with Bill Gates?" Can you do that?
I don't think he likes my book very much,
okay,
because it is a critique of billionaires and philanthropy, and he doesn't. His image is highly curated now. He has, and this is true for, say, anyone in Bollywood or Hollywood or any, but his team runs regular polls, right, doing sentiment analysis to see what works, what doesn't. If he's doing a blog, does that humanize? If Gates is like writing in a very playful tone, which is not him, which is not how he talks in real life, but there is this tone that works in his blogging, and so that's what they kind of adopt. And
okay, I have other questions to ask, but I don't want to hog it, about crazy things billionaires have done, also about how India has changed. We may or may not get to that. But other questions from any volunteers? There have been people working hard as volunteers in the audience. Are there any volunteers who have a question to kick us off? Any volunteers with a question? Like specifically volunteers? Okay, does Bachi count as a volunteer? No, okay. Bachi is going in first regardless. Go for it. Yeah.
Is it work? Yeah. Hi, this is Tanuja. I am leading the social media team. But I had a
Great.
question. Yeah. I'm very intrigued by the title and the topic of your book. So I'd like to ask you, if Bill Gates was present here in person as the third member of this panelist, what would be your first question to him?
If Bill Gates was right here now, we'd be a bit worried, wouldn't we? Or you'd be at him.
I would be flattered that he, I would be like, okay, this is the one festival where he is willing to come to. It would speak to the festival, and less about the content.
So what would you ask him?
I would ask him if he agreed with the premise of my book, because I think he would. He's not self-unaware. It's just that he does what he wants. And he has developed a lot of kind of an understanding. It's called maturity, I guess, in a way. So I would ask him if he agreed with the premise of my book, and I think he would say a qualified yes.
My question would be,
that's pretty bold.
where is your chaperone? But okay, let's have another question. Somebody in the audience about billionaires or Bill Gates. Here we have one. Go ahead. Carry on. You've got the mic. Has anyone got a microphone? Go for it.
Hi. Because of the work that I was doing with HIV/AIDS, I sat on the advisory committee of the Bill and Melinda Gates HIV panel in India. And we only kind of interacted with Melinda and never with Bill Gates. So was Bill Gates really just the money bank, or did he actually go out and do all that philanthropy? I mean, the actual work, I mean, other than signing the checks.
Good question.
Absolutely. I think he learned over time that you have to go and meet people and understand their experiences. Melinda displayed empathy from the beginning, and I think she understood that philanthropy isn't a top-down thing where you write a check, you have some ideas of metrics that you want to fulfill, and that's how you get something done. So that was Gates in the beginning when they were running the HIV/AIDS program, which is also interesting because they were out of touch with the ground reality. I'm sure you know more about it than I do, which is why the program had like a mixed record. But I think Gates understood the value and the importance, both for his image and for his own understanding of philanthropy, to spend more time on the ground. But of course, I mean, the team at the foundation would spend 9 months planning for his next visit. And you know, when you have these pictures of him with people on the ground, they're highly curated images. And so it's not like he's really out there. It's like you're bringing in a bunch of people who've been trained to speak in a certain way to him. And but I think he has learned that it's important to do that.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Oh, there's one hand waving there. But 6 row there, go for it.
Do you think billionaires or influential people have an ethical responsibility to talk about like genocides and the killing of many people, such as that in Gaza right now?
So billionaires, do they have an ethical responsibility to talk about things like genocide, for instance, Gaza?
As personal citizens, of course, they want to, they don't want to, that's fine. But I think a lot of billionaires are public figures, the way a lot of celebrities are. And so I do think that what they say carries weight. And, you know, if you have Bill Gates or someone coming out there and saying that, look, it's wrong, there's genocide happening where it involves Gaza or any other issue, I think it would carry weight. It would sway the conversation. Now, do they have a responsibility to do so? I mean, they're private citizens in that sense. So it's up to, every man or woman for himself or herself. But I will say that if they were in a role that is public facing, then definitely they have an ethical responsibility to speak out, because they are seen, they're venerated, right? Like they're kind of like on these pedestals because we worship wealth, a lot of people. And so, so I think as public citizens, they would have a responsibility.
They like people knowing their names when they're doing things, don't they? I mean, if a big donation was made to the Kasoli Club, it could suddenly become the Ambani Club or the Adani Club and change its name. Not all billionaires do that, but do most of them? It makes you doubt, are they just trying for immortality or for people to love them rather than do the good work that their money can do?
Yeah, I think if you look at the universities and endowments and hospital wings, I mean, everything is named after a billionaire, right? You have the T.H. Chan School of Public Health at Harvard, which is named after Priscilla Chan, who's the wife of Mark Zuckerberg, which is named after her dad. And then you have the Lakshmi Mittal Institute for South Asia Studies, also at Harvard, just to provide some examples. You have the Sackler Wing at the Met in the US, which used to be called the Sackler Wing before they got extremely, before their empire collapsed. So I think most billionaires do want that recognition. They want a legacy, and for that you need to leave your name and your imprint in some way. A lot of them also write memoirs as a way of preserving their legacy for posterity. But you do have some, who give their money away. And, there is one very interesting instance of a billionaire who gave his money away without, namelessly and completely anonymous. And when he died, his net worth was far smaller than what people thought it would be, because he'd been giving that money away. And you wouldn't know this guy, and you wouldn't know.
But it is Chuck Feeney.
It is, well, we know now
It's
because,
Chuck Feeney.
yeah, we know now. But yeah, for the most part, billionaires do want their names out there.
So there was a question over there that I came. Actually, I think it was maybe a couple of rows back further. Somebody. Oh well, I'll go with this gentleman.
First of all, Anupreeta, very courageous journalist you are. You could encounter things which a normal journalist won't do.
And also, you've offended Bill Gates, powerful man.
My question to you is, with so many billionaires growing up in the world, can't there be a team of these billionaires who could change course of history and stop people fighting wars and killing people?
We'll call them the Billionaire Avengers Assemble.
I mean, yeah, because billionaires probably run those companies too. Could there be? I mean, there are billionaire clubs that, again, like I said, they talk about things that are, talk about privilege and talk about what they can do with their money. I don't know that there would be. I think they all would have different instincts, and then they would squabble about what is the best way to do something. Because there is this, hubris is a big part of what defines a lot of billionaires, right? So if you have made so much money doing one thing, you would naturally, I think that you would be equally good at doing another thing or 10 other things. And so if you got like a team of billionaires, I think they wouldn't be able to agree whose way was the right way to go about doing it and doing things. So I cannot imagine that anyone would come together to to save the world.
Just think of lots of Elon Musk's bickering. And I suppose we remember, where do they get all their billions from? They get them from us. So, intervention from the side? Okay, question here. Gentleman straight in front of me. Have you got who's got the microphone? Please do speak, whoever has a microphone.
Should I speak?
Please, yes.
Please go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Bill Gates, the name, famous name for richest man ever born for so many years, decades, he was the richest man in the world. But Bill Gates did great service to the humanity. First thing what he did was eradication of polio in India and almost all over the world. That was a big thing that he did. Failings are always with us, and failings will always remain with us. But the good things that those are done are good things.
So
I say, Bertrand Russell, who had 4 marriages and lot many affairs, more than marriages, had lived up to 99 years, and he went into jail at the age of 94 and got Nobel Prize. But he was a good person. So that is all right.
Okay, so that is a good point, or a good reminder of the good that he has done. We've heard about bad, we've heard about good. So I asked you before, did you think he was a power for good or for bad, or you weren't sure? So I want to ask you again, hands up who thinks he was, based on what you've heard, maybe you've changed your mind, maybe you haven't. Who here thinks he's a power for good? Okay, maybe a little bit fewer. Who here thinks he's a power not for good, for bad? Okay, roughly the same.
Yeah.
And who still isn't sure?
So I think, yeah, I do think, again, it's very hard to speak in terms of binaries, right? Everyone is good in a certain way and good in a certain light, good in certain contexts, and not so. And that's just the way, whether or not you have a lot of money. I think a lot of money allows you to make changes and sway conversations to your benefit. And so that does amplify your behavior or your goodness or your badness. But fundamentally, we are all we all have nuances to our personalities. And the case in my book, what I tried to do was to illustrate all of this through the image of one man who has changed in the public eye over many decades. And, it is for, my answer to you is please read my book and you will,
Good
and
answer.
everyone should, right? Yeah, to figure out for themselves. That was just a pitch to yeah.
May
to
I
sell.
amplify that pitch?
Yeah.
So the
please.
book is called Billionaire Nerd Savior King, which sounds like 4 books for the price of one. And it's the hidden truth about Bill Gates and his power to shape our world by Anupreeta Das. And sometimes people say, well, I've heard all the good bits in the talk, so there's no point in me buying the book. But there are many salacious, crazy, eyebrow-raising stories inside this book, which I recommend you read, not only about Bill Gates, but about that whole class of unbelievably wealthy people who are, changing our lives. And you'll find Anupreeta over there, waiting to sign copies of her book for you. So thank you very much indeed. Oh, wait.
Can we do the questions later, please? Outside.
One.
Sir, we are time up. We'll get late.
So the question is, having done all this, did you ask permission? I hope not. Has he sued you yet?
Yeah. Has he sued me? No, his team has sent threatening letters.
I can
and
see
they
some
did
lawyers
that.
over there
Yeah.
listening carefully.
But I think in the U.S. at least, and laws in the U.K. are different. So this is, and only the U.K. would say this is U.K. and Commonwealth rights. So there are certain edits that are made to make sure that you are protecting against libel
Basically,
or
get this
defamation.
book before it is banned and form a
But-
protective ring to
but-
protect her from lawyers.
Yeah, but just to. Yeah, I know. That's my hope. That
And
is
this
my
will be a
hope.
collector's
But-
item.
But in the U.S., it's hard. You have freedom spread. Speech and expression is still at least technically protected by the Constitution, although we're in a different, changing society.
We
now.
have to stop, to be fair to the next panel. I'm sorry, we have to stop. Well,
Right, sir. Thank
We'll
you
have a
very much. He's
conversation
not
about
going to
that.
sue you. And like he just said, if she does get sued, she'll become very famous. So pick up your book now and get your photograph and autograph. Right, thank you very much, Anupreeta, and thank you very much, Paul. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure louder round of applause. Come on.